Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's video, you have me, Scott, Ty, Phil, Chris. I almost called you Jeff. I got to start over.
But like you guys don't have hair, so I feel like when you see other people with hair, they all just look the same.
That's it. Yeah, it's just like, yep.
We have a special guest.
All right.
Buttons is here tonight. We'll see how long she lasts. But in this video, we have a cardboard consensus, but we also want to talk about a PSA grading change alongside a cool card that Ty wants to talk about. But
I'll pull it up.
with that being said, how do we feel about PSA tightening their centering grading standards from 60-40 to 55-45 for front centering? Good change, bad change? Is it the exact same and they're just announcing it now? How do we feel? Ty, what do you think?
There's a ton of uproar about this all over social media. People have been literally having fights with each other now on live streams and on social media and Instagram, and this is causing quite the stir. It's interesting because if you look at it before, PSA said like between 55-45 and 60-40. And so they sort of tightened that up. And in a way, I feel like that's how it should have always been. It kind of needs to be defined, not sort of vague. But the bigger thing when the PSA is grading the cards, as opposed to like Beckett, who's got subgrades, is that they are grading within boundaries, but their graders are given the wiggle room to subjectively look at the overall appearance of the card and make a determination. It's not hyper scientific, which is one of the reasons why Nat Turner has been like generally opposed to computer vision grading and other things. He's like, there's an art as much as a science to grading cards. So the thing that I didn't like was that they didn't announce it. They just sort of put it out. And so that's not good optics for them, in my opinion. It's like, come out and just do what Peter does when he sits behind the SGC desk and, you know, is very transparent about things and mistakes that they made and other stuff. And generally speaking, I think Nat is very well respected. Anytime he does interviews, he's very accessible. He gets back to people on Instagram. I honestly don't know how he does it. Like, it's just the time that he must get a ton of messages. So I think that was where they dropped the ball. The bigger piece has been the interesting conversation around people saying whether or not they think the new like 9-digit, you know, cert numbers should be worth more now that they're 10s or less. And this is where, for me, this is my personal opinion. I know a lot of people disagree with this, but I've long railed against what I think is the insanity of premiums on grading cards, especially 10s, especially PSA 10s, relative to other grades, 9 and below. You already get a 3 or 4x multiplier on every PSA 10, if not many multiples above and beyond that with vintage stuff. And in the ultra modern market in particular, if we're now talking about a 5% difference in centering, commanding even larger of a premium, it's like, well, we're getting into like black label territory or something with BGS, which I think is insane. It's the card. Like, I would always rather have the rarer card in a lower grade than the high grade of a common card. I don't care about grade scarcity nearly as much as like the rarity, actual rarity of a card. So that's the part that to me is like, everybody's kind of up in arms about this and they get frustrated, but this sort of like zooms out on the topic for me and makes that whole conversation about the premium of a PSA 10 in the first place seem kind of ludicrous if we're bringing it down to one aspect of the 4 things that you analyze with a 5% difference, you know. And I think they've been doing this for a while and they just changed it on their website. That's my impression.
I agree. What do you think, Chris?
I think that last thing Ty said is right. I think they have been doing this for a while. I don't know if have you guys noticed, I've had like maybe 7-8 people message me on Instagram in the last 4 or 5 days. They've gotten orders back from PSA and just gotten annihilated, like 6s and 7s on stuff that they thought was a 9 or a 10. So I don't know if they're tightening up or if they have a bunch of new graders over there that are just trying to make a name for themselves by being brutal on stuff. But I mean, I've had these guys like they've cracked out the cards and looked at them and they don't see anything. And it just seems weird. Like, it says multiple people. It's at least 8 people, I think. I was just looking at my text now.
I just had the opposite happen. Yeah, I did a box. The video will air a couple weeks from now, probably. But I graded every card from a Topps Chrome Update Breakers to Light box, just every single card in it. So I ripped a box and then I sent every card to grading. So it was kind of an experiment of, well, can we actually get anything good? People always talk about, you know, grade the good stuff, but I wanted to look at the quality control and see when you're just ripping brand new products, something short like that, what is the quality? I looked at those cards before I sent them, and I sent them through our bulk submission with Got Baseball cards at Cards HQ. And I thought there were like 1 or 2 cards in it that might get a 6. Like I thought the QC on the cards was atrocious. And all but one of the refractors in the box came back 10s. I think I got like a 70% gem rate on the box, and there was 1 8. So it was like 1 8. The rest were 9s and 10s. And I was shocked. There were some that to me didn't look like they met the centering standards and should have been 9s, and they were 10s. So I had the opposite experience just happen, which is
Interesting.
They didn't know it was me. So before anybody says, "Oh, you got the influencer grades," whatever. No.
My question is it one guy just giving people bad grades? And it's just unfortunate those same people got that one guys because they're not particularly consistent. I also wonder if PSA just being more strict on like back indents or corner they can dog ear a little bit and you can push it down a little flat to the naked eye. They might just be paying more attention than they used to, and so you have to make sure you're paying more attention when you send them out. That's my thoughts, because I've always felt like the grades I've gotten about 95% of the time from PSA makes sense. Every once in a while you'll get a weird outlier, but I haven't seen anything too crazy personally lately. I even had a card just barely that I thought was way overgraded. I sent that to you. Remember that one that I sent in our chat? Had like the edge that was like popping up because of a patch. And got
that's right. Yeah.
So like it's one of those things. I don't know. I don't think there's really that big of a conspiracy. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah. Reading through the definition that's been updated now, it does say the image must be centered on the card within a tolerance not to exceed approximately 55/45% on the front and 75/25% on the reverse. So the word approximate still being used, like it still tells me that if something is 57/43 and the rest of the card is absolutely flawless, and this was true like 2-3 years ago. If somebody like showed a card and was like, "Oh, I've gotten cards that are worse than this that got a PSA 10," yes. If the centering is a little bit off on the front, clearly to the discernible eye, it's off, but the rest of the card is absolutely perfect. It has to be absolutely perfect to offset that. Then it might still get a PSA 10. I don't see a whole lot changing from this. I'd like to look into the gem rate data to see if their percent 10s have gone down over time. Also, it appears that this move was to keep up with the standards of the other grading companies like CGC, SGC, and Beckett, because I think they have the same standard of 55/45 at the front. Now with the back, part of this definition, did that change too? So
no, that's the same.
So 75/25% of the reverse, that's what they're allowing. It wasn't a range before?
No, I believe that was the same. But Phil, here's our good friend Neo. You know Neo?
Yep.
He reached out to PSA. This was their official response. So yes, we did recently update the language on our grading standards on our website to specify that the target threshold for centering for a card to qualify PSA 10 grade is 55/45. This has long been the ideal centering threshold. To clarify this variance from 55/45 for a PSA 10 grade can still happen today. So they're saying they still are okay not grading within the 55/45 threshold. That's up to the grader's discretion. And I'm sure that comes down to almost exclusively what set is it? Are there defined borders? Like what you said, is the card perfect and it's 56/44? So I think that it really is exactly the same. I think it's just they removed that. I actually saw this on Twitter once. Someone tagged Nat Turner, and it was a PSA 9, and because they got grader notes, and it said it was off center. And so he tagged Nat Turner and said, "I have my centering tool right here, and this is 57/43." And then Nat Turner had to say, "Okay, that's within our standards." And then he actually sent it back and got it graded. So maybe they're just like, you know what? We have to make it more specific. Say it is 55/45. If we want it to be different, we can do that at our own discretion, but we're not being held to that standard. I think that's what it is more personally. Because I saw that actual conversation happen, and everybody was really mad because PSA went back on their grades. And so I think that's why, in my opinion.
Yeah, it would be very dangerous for PSA to make a material change to their grading standards. I don't consider this material for the reasons that Scott just outlined, because then you could have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of overgraded PSA 10s go back to them with the most easy, empirical or scientifically proven sort of the only attribute that can be linked to a specific, this is what it is. It's an objective 57/43. Measuring tools can be used to look at this, even through pictures, right? You don't even need the card in hand. yeah, that could lead to a lot of insurance payouts if they had to cover the loss for all those cards.
So that's my guess. And they basically say in this disclaimer, it's the same. And really, we kind of noticed them tightening down on centering regardless the past few years. At least I have felt that way. Because before, you always could say, send your off-center cards to PSA. Send your cards with surface issues to SGC. Send your cards with back corner issues to BGS. And I believe a lot of those things, but I don't know. I think this is probably the correct move, even though I could see why people are upset.
Yeah.
We lost Ty, by the way. He had to top, so we are aware he's gone. We'll acknowledge it.
Who?
He really wanted to show a card, but I guess we didn't get to it. Any other thoughts from you, Chris, on this?
No. I think you guys have covered it. Yeah. We have we're at that West Coast card show. We're dropping off like a 30 card sub, and now I'm really nervous. Not for the centering, but just for what feels like tougher grades in general. But maybe it is just a couple graders. Who knows?
I would love to see your blind submission when it's finished.
Okay.
You mentioned that you dropped off a submission a while back. Did that ever get entered?
It took 3 weeks. So the bullpen headquarters, bullpen HQ here in El Segundo, they had a PSA drop-off event, and I dropped off I think it was 18 cards for a buddy of mine in bulk, and it took 21 days to get checked in.
And they said they were behind, but that's still pretty crazy.
That's a lot. After
a while, you get concerned. It's like, did they lose it?
Yeah, I mean, I have the paperwork, from when I dropped it off that they signed and acknowledged the grader took it, or not the grader, the guy received it, but on the website it just hadn't shown up. So yeah, it gets nerve-wracking after a while. But we're at step one, so we'll go from there.
Sick. All right. Well, I think that's good for
Ty wanted to show the liquid
gold. I'll pull that up real quick. Okay, so here's the liquid gold. These are out of Diamond Icons. A lot of cool cards in Diamond Icons this year, but Topps has been really hyping this up as like new technology, whatever they want to say, but it shines really well. We'll keep this muted because I think he goes a little crazy here. But they do shine very well, very new type of design, which is nice. We saw a lot of innovation like in the 90s. Think of the Star Rubies. Think of the PMGs. A lot of really unique designs. If Topps is leaning into that, I think that's really cool. So how do you guys feel about how these look?
They look great, but they're in Diamond Icons, so I don't really know. Does it matter?
Yes and no. I think it's a good step in the right direction. I think with Gilded, they introduced, and Chris, I think this is what you were talking about when you were like, oh, like it looks like the guy top, like it looks like the player is sort of like textured and he pops out from behind like the background. I think that's called etching. We might have referenced it in like one of our first like 5 episodes. Those back pages is he's a guy that really talks about this, but it's them doing stuff that they used to do in the 90s, basically. And this is another thing where you talked about this, Scott, like we want to bring back the old printing processes, right? Some of these more innovative ways to design cards. I don't know how to do stuff like that, but the more they can do to use new technology to create interesting, cool looking cards. And maybe this one looks better in person than even on video. In pictures, it's probably going to be super blurry. All the pictures I've seen have been kind of but I'm sure in person it looks amazing. So good for Fanatics. Even if it's in Diamond Icons, I don't hold that against them.
If they're trying to make it high end, that's their goal. Like here's an example of like 90s cards just looking really cool. And like this is my Larry Walker, so of course I want to show it off. But that's not why I'm showing this actually. I just knew there was one. But this is the goal of Topps, and it should be the goal of Topps, to make the hard to get cards cool looking, not just hard to get. And they kind of do that, in my opinion, with the Heritage Gold Chromes. Sometimes those are kind of almost 3D with the texturing they do in the background. And I like that. So I think that leaning into it is a very, very good thing.
Yeah.
Love to see it in Topps Chrome.
Agreed.
All right. Yeah. Ready for some, I don't know if you mean to do cardboard consensus. We can just talk about one last topic. How do we feel about Mahomes versus Otani after that Super Bowl? Phil, you own a big Otani. How are you feeling right now?
It's unfortunate, not just him losing, but the way it happened. it sort of solidifies that their team this year was kind of fool's gold. I mean, they didn't have a running game. That's not Mahomes' fault, right? I had a feeling it was going to bite them. Kareem Hunt, guy could never break 15-plus yard carries going against Barkley. Superior O-line for the Eagles, superior D-line for the Eagles, and that really showed up. And then just the defense, like, owned Mahomes. So, like, now he's 3 for 5 in Super Bowls, which is still greater than 50%, but it's pretty close to 50%. And now I think a lot of people, so Ty made some really good points about how Mahomes might be on the decline. Throwing accuracy, arm strength, and obviously the running has slowed down. So, like, I made a comment about how Otani might not age as well as Mahomes, but now it has me kind of second guessing. And then put on top the different body types that they have. Like, add that to the equation. And yes, Mahomes could start reading diet books like Tom Brady did halfway through his career, but easier said than done, right? We don't know what he's going to do. And maybe, based on the feedback we got from that video, maybe Mahomes, maybe I got it wrong about him. Like, I thought he was like kind of like a neutral character, and it was more about the folks around him, his family, the team, etc., all the shenanigans. Like, I thought it was more like he just wasn't very well liked versus he's an unlikable athlete in person. But it seems like a lot of people that commented said that he's very unlikable too, and a lot of those comments got a lot of upvotes. So maybe I was wrong about saying that I thought Mahomes was like a better bet to be valuable in 20 years or whatever the question was. Maybe Otani. And it's great because I've got more cards of Otani, so I'll definitely win if I'm wrong. And more valuable cards of Otani too. So
What do you think, Chris?
A general football collector question. Like, is it more important, like, the number of Super Bowl wins, or is like the record in the Super Bowl more important? Like, what was Brady, like 6 and 2?
7 of 10. He won 7. Yeah.
Sheesh. That's crazy.
Losing 10 times. That's crazy.
So what's it? And you're in uncharted territories when you get to 10 different Super Bowls, but they both matter. I think, like a Super Bowl appearance, nobody ever three-peats, right? So a Super Bowl appearance this year was impressive enough, but he wasn't a great quarterback throughout the regular season, and everybody's all about the playoffs and stuff. But what's going to be most memorable for this season is what Josh Allen did now then versus what Mahomes did. And I'm not saying that he's like close to the status of Mahomes yet, but it's going to get people to completely overlook what Mahomes did and focus on Josh Allen, the MVP, AFC conference appearance, championship appearance. And people are going to be thinking back on Lamar Jackson and another really solid season, finished second for MVP. People are going to be thinking about Barkley, and then Mahomes. Like, he was barely a top 10 to 15 quarterback this year based on stats. So
that was my question for you, Phil, is
a regular season record doesn't, I think they lost like one game. Like, that doesn't get remembered if you don't win the Super Bowl. Unless you're breaking a ton of records like what Brady did that year when he had Randy Moss in 2007. And then he lost in the Super Bowl.
So I'm not as big of a football guy. I know football. I played football. But with Josh Allen versus Mahomes, how confident are you about like Josh Allen for the next 5 years versus Mahomes for the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's Mahomes against the rest of the league. I don't feel great about. Allen still needs to make it to a Super Bowl.
Is he getting old? How old is
he's
Josh
taken
Allen?
seriously? He was a rookie in 2018. I'm not sure about his age. He must be like 28-ish.
28. Good guess.
Okay. What's going to hurt Josh Allen is if like Burrow makes a big run next year, right? Because the people that buy Allen are similar to people that buy Burrow, and used to be Herbert too, but a lot of that money has kind of come out of Herbert into other players. Yeah, Josh Allen's a great player for sure.
The hard thing for me is it's a lot easier if you're looking at like players' aging curves in the NFL. There's not very many Tom Brady's. It's like looking at like an Adrian Beltre and expecting every baseball player to have the same aging curve as Adrian Beltre. It's just not. You have to bet against, not because you don't believe in the guy, but just because of like the way 99% of players have gone. So hopefully Mahomes doesn't have the typical aging curve of a player in his age, but we'll see.
Yeah, I was bummed I wasn't on that video where you guys talked about the Otani versus Mahomes to begin with. I would definitely go with Otani. Like it would be a no-brainer for me. Because I don't really follow football that closely. So that obviously hurts my interest in the players. But as last I checked, I don't think Mahomes plays defense. So Otani still being a two-way player this year, he's just going to be an absolute legend at the end of the day in terms of for baseball cards. So I would absolutely go Otani over Mahomes before this game, and after. It doesn't really change, my opinion of anything.
The good thing about Otani, he has a World Series. Doesn't really even matter in baseball, and he has it. So now it's just about kind of like regular season and building out MVP awards and things more so than more World Series. Where Mahomes, if he wants to really make that next jump, I feel like he needs to match Super Bowls or get closer to Brady. So there's a lot he has to do to be remembered as the GOAT. Phil, do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I think Otani needs to give us a little bit more, and not necessarily pitching, just like dominant seasons,
big moments,
big whatever. Just big stats. Another MVP I'd like to see. Another 2 9+ WAR seasons I'd like to see. And I'm not just saying, that's what's going to take to be more than Mahomes. Like, I don't know at this point, but as a fan of Otani, I think there's still a lot baked in.
Yeah,
there's still quite a bit baked in. That's one of the main reasons why Scott hasn't bought any of his cards yet, because they're really expensive. In one of the episodes, we talked about how his base autograph is more money than Clayton Kershaw's gold autograph, who was voted top 3 generational active player, top 2, right after Trout
and Otani, then Kershaw. But yeah,
got it. Yeah,
Otani. But it's a base versus a gold. The point still stays exactly the same. What you're making.
Yeah.
My concern about Otani is how many pitchers have had 2 Tommy Johns. We can say this wasn't a real Tommy John, but been as successful pitching.
We don't know much about this internal brace procedure.
No. It's new.
Like people. So I was talking to Chris about this, and back in like October, people thought that Spencer Strider would make it back at like the 12-month mark, and then the Braves came out in December and said he's not going to be ready for. They didn't even give a timeline. They said he won't be ready for the start of season, and they gave a rough timeline for Acuna. And Acuna's timeline was like pushed out enough where based on no timeline for Strider, that's like July at least.
Okay, I gotta just tell you this. Obviously, as a Braves fan, I'm watching and reading everything I get my hands on. Anthopoulos did an interview with MLB Radio. I want to say last weekend, not Super Bowl weekend, but the weekend before. And he was asked about the Braves trying to go get a starting pitcher, and he said that that Spencer Strider is ahead of schedule, and they're expecting him to be on the mound near the beginning of the season. So he would probably be back before Acuna. He didn't put a date on it. He did not put a date on it, but it sounded like he's not going to miss a ton of time.
That's not just lip service. Sometimes they do that.
It could be.
That's insane. So that'd be like, he got his surgery in like mid-April. So that'd be like 12 months.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But apparently he's throwing bullpens.
Well, I mean, Otani was hitting 4 months after he had his surgery. Yeah. So maybe it really isn't as intensive.
Bryce Harper turned pretty quickly.
He did too.
Jason Dominguez would have, but the team doesn't let him play.
I mean, they can't just if you have Alex Verdugo on your roster, you've got to get that 87 OPS plus in the lineup. You have to get him in there.
Oh, he's so bad.
But yeah,
I'll trade you Mookie Betts for him.
Who?
Alex Verdugo.
Well, yeah, I would assume so. Still, poor Red Sox. Don't rub that in Phil's face. He's right here. Yeah, I feel like with the Dodgers, it's kind of the opposite for Otani. I feel like they're gonna wait. If let's say he has 100 innings, I think they want those innings. They want 30 of them in October. So I don't think he's going to be on the mound until July 1st. Just so they're going to want him, and they have enough arms to cover the innings.
I agree. Especially if they get Kershaw again, then they can even do the same thing with him, right? Just stretch him out, get him built up slow. Dave Roberts already said that Otani's itching to pitch, but they're throw him out there till at the earliest mid-May. But that means if Dave Roberts is saying mid-May, it's really June, because Dave Roberts always he'll change it when as it gets close.
There's a mean suggestion here, but the smart thing for the Dodgers to do would be get Kershaw for the first 3 months. And then they shut him down, and then Otani pitches the rest of the season. He takes the rotation spot from that point.
I would love to see Kershaw have rest heading into the postseason. You saw in 2020 he did great, so maybe that's all he needs.
Somebody, I forget who, might have been Eno Saros, was talking about his innings projections for the Dodgers this year with their staff, and he was like, "Yeah, the guy I have for the most innings on the Dodgers is Blake Snell, and I have him at 110."
Oh,
What?
what?
Wow.
Something like that. It was under 130.
Yeah, there's not enough innings. Like I don't know how these guys can get 150 unless a bunch of people get hurt and one dude just stays in the rotation.
Can we just talk about the Dodgers for 2 seconds?
Sure.
Like Sasaki, Otani, we have Glasnow, we have Snell. Who am I forgetting?
Yamamoto.
Like that's a good team. We have the young guys as well, and maybe Kershaw added in on top. Probably
Tony
Kershaw.
Gonsolin.
Yeah, Tony Gonsolin is healthy. Dustin May should be healthy for a little while.
If these pitchers are healthy, actually, so what ended up happening? Andrew Friedman, he said that his goal this year is to not make trades at the trade deadline. He doesn't want to trade to upgrade the roster. I was going to say maybe they'll trade some if they're all healthy, but I think he's just going to say, you know what? If we don't throw Tony Gonsolin very much, I don't care. Just need him just in case.
You can never have too many.
Yeah, that's fine. Good for them. But baseball's funny. You only need to have 2 pitchers have 2 bad games, and all of a sudden you're down 2-0 in the DS.
Yeah, it can happen real fast.
Real fast.
Yeah, I mean, think about if Dylan Cease doesn't give up, if Otani doesn't hit that 3-run home run off Dylan Cease in game 2, the Dodgers probably just get swept and go home.
That too, but also if the Padres can hit a bullpen in game 4?
Game 4, yeah.
Like if they could just hit, they should have won that series in more than one way.
Yeah, they had a lot of opportunities for sure. Yeah.
I wouldn't even be mad if you said the Padres had a better roster at the time because their starting rotation was so much better.
Wait, the Dodgers said that was the hardest. To them, that was their World Series.
Which makes sense because the Mets, they were a good team, but it felt like they just had like a Linsanity run more than them being like really good. They were the best team in baseball post-May, so I don't want to like take that away from the Mets. They had the best record in baseball after their big slow start, so they were good. But it did feel like the Padres were just like this looming giant for them.
Yeah, they had
2 years ago before the Diamondbacks did. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
what are you thinking, Phil? I see you thinking down there.
Yeah. The Mets starting staff's a joke. Like I wonder how do they even get that far with their pitching staff? Sean Manaea pitched lights out, Manaea, whatever his name is, and then Mark Vientos, which he was really good, and his prices are up close to 10x since like last April.
He's a guy who would scare me if I had some big cards of his in regards to his pricing. He like can't regress at all, or else his cards will drop a ton fast. But like he already had a good year. Like it's tough.
Signing Alonso should help him take a little pressure off of him.
Yeah, I agree. Now he won't play first, which is where he was going to have to go, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
The position he's comfortable at. But I don't know. I just love baseball. I'm so excited it's almost back. It's going to be here before we know it. Yeah. It's going to be great.
I would like the Red Sox. I was shocked. For some reason I thought this guy had signed Phil, but Nick Pivetta is still a free agent, and he turned down the qualifying offer and has not received an offer. I'm surprised that they haven't reached some agreement. I would love the Braves to pick him up. I think he'd be a great like 4th or 5th starter, and then possibly like shift to the bullpen later in the season. But his spin rates are crazy. He was really good, or could be really good.
The Dodgers should sign him. Just kidding.
They probably will. There's got to be at least a 10% chance it happens.
They're the only ones willing to spend money.
I legitimately don't
think good enough for them though.
I don't think they have room. Like they just signed Kike Hernandez yesterday. I think they announced it or maybe it's happening today because their 40-man becomes official earlier. The Dodgers and Cubs, like their 40-man, the paperwork, whatever, it starts earlier because they have that series in Tokyo. Oh. So they needed to their roster was too full of players to officially sign Kike Hernandez. But now they can like IL someone. So the Kershaw thing will probably happen soon now.
When did they report? I think I heard that once the 60-day IL happens, the moment they report, they'll probably sign Kershaw.
Probably, yeah.
I sure hope they sign Kershaw.
I'm sure
those like 30 strikeouts, and then I'll be happy.
Yeah, he doesn't want to go anywhere.
Hope he gets out of there, so then he's no longer a life career Dodger.
And
your whole thesis gets blown up, and you sell the card tomorrow. To me, probably
for 10% less than I paid.
Yeah, or like he strikes out 29 guys, and then before his next start, he gets caught at a dog fight with like 2 teenagers, and then that card just plummets in value. Feel free to edit that comment out.
All right, guys. Good chatting with you all. We'll see you in the next video.